I want to show you a quick walkthrough here of mixing rock music um, in Propellerhead Reason. I know like a lot of Reason users tend to mix a lot of electronic music, a lot of EDM, a lot of hip hop, but this is a great DAW for people to use to mix instruments that they're actually recording with microphones and electric guitars and bass and real drums and things of that nature too. And I'm going to try and make this as much useful information as fast as possible. And we'll just go ahead and take a little listen to a snippet of it right now here. Okay, so the first thing I want to point out when I look at all these levels, and I don't see anything going in the red in here, but that's really not the point. These can be pushed all the way into the red. That doesn't mean that these are going to clip. I guess what you need to look out for as far as clipping is concerned is over on the master bus itself. And so when all your levels are combined, come together, you don't want to ever see this go into the red. And so there are some things that we've added to the master bus itself. And let's go ahead and scroll up there. You can use this thing on the side here to scroll up to whatever part of the stack you want to see. Or this is basically rack devices that you've added to your channel strip. So what I've actually added on the master bus here is we have an equalizer where I've done nothing. I finally, when I had everything mixed, didn't do anything to it. This is always kind of I'd say most of the time you don't want to use the stereo imager, and you want to try and do most of your stereoizing, I guess you'd call it, in the mix itself. But I sometimes put this on and I play around with it a little bit, and I hear if it's actually adding to the mix or if it's detracting. In this case, I went ahead and I kind of spread the frequencies that are over 3.15 kilohertz, which is pretty high on the spectrum, and just spread them out a little bit. So everything below this is still the original mix. This compressor is being bypassed, and that's okay. One thing nice about Propellerhead Reason is you actually have this built-in master compressor that simulates the compressor that was on the SSL. And the way you want that to work is so that you see it working a little bit, but it shouldn't be working a whole lot. Like you just want to see it kind of bumping up on some of the harder hits. Like even that, according to some tutorials I've seen, maybe a little too much. Sometimes I like to push it, and I like the sound of it. It really kind of helps things kind of glue together a little better. But there's always kind of this art to trying to make it sound like it's all gelling together and being over compressed. So what else about these? Let's get into some of these tracks, or some of these channels. I've actually bussed over all of my drums here into, well, actually a couple ways. All the drums ultimately go over into a channel strip called All Drums, where I can, lower and raise and lower the volume of the kit as an instrument to itself. And you really want to think about that. If you start thinking of each of these channels as a separate instrument. You kind of do. I mean, a little bit. You can see the staggered levels on each one. They all have to have a little separate treatment. But in the end, you're trying to make an instrument, which is the drums. And that's going to have kind of its own EQ. You can see here I've gone ahead and put a high pass filter that cuts frequencies somewhere below 40, but it gets a little bump in the low end for that kick drum right around 40. It's scooped a little bit, and then I've raised up some of those sizzling frequencies on it so the cymbals come through a little better. And then I've again, there's another little low pass filter on it at the end to go ahead and cut out some of the pain that might happen as a result of the sibilants. What else can we say about this? So yeah, what happens is the cymbals get bussed over to cymbals, and then the cymbals channel gets bussed over to the drums channel, so all the drums end up here. This really helps when you've got everything put together this way, to just work with these. You can see these channel strips that are colored here, and those are actually the ones that in the end, when everything that's in those buses is mixed in a nice way that's relative to each other, then you can do the overall mix with these big master buses. Two basses is kind of a strange thing about this band. I don't even know if I really want to get into that, but basically we've got one bass that has a lot of treble, a lot of mid-range in it, and a lot of the low end is cut out of it, and then we have another bass over here that's holding down the low end. I want to show you something about this that a lot of people say, no, don't do that, but I'm sorry. If you want cool sounding kick drum, in my experience, this is going to really help. What I've done, let's go ahead and let this roll, and you can see we've got an overall compressor that helps kind of keep the overall volume of the instrument level, but then I also have one that ducks it slightly when the kick drum hits. And to me, I can't even hear the pumping. I can't even hear, and maybe if I solo it, you might be able to. Let's go ahead and listen to that. Yeah, okay. So you can kind of hear it when you solo it, but in the mix you really can't hear that. And what happens then is both of these instruments benefit, both the bass and the kick are going to benefit from not getting in each other's way, and both are dead center in the mix too. You can see there's no width to this. It's basically a mono channel, this kick drum here, and then the same with the bass here. It's mono and it's dead center. So if I've got two instruments with the same frequency and the same space in the mix going off at the same time, you're going to end up having phase interference problems. So I think that's an important thing to remember about putting these mixes together. Two guitars in the mix. Again, I went and listened to some Iron Maiden, but especially some AC/DC. We're not in the same ballpark with with those guitar players, but you want them to not get in each other's way. And I always thought it was strange when you put the headphones on listening to AC/DC and they've got Malcolm, over to one speaker and Angus all the way over to the other one, which is a little strange with headphones, but if you throw it on a turntable, loudspeakers out in the room, it makes for a much nicer mix because the instruments just separate a lot better that way. And so I said, if it's good enough for AC/DC, it's good enough for us. Now again, if you can see the way these dials are set, I'm not going to the extreme. It's not extreme left and extreme right, even though it may kind of appear that way from these dials. They are still sharing information in the opposite speaker. Those get bussed over here, and then what else? And with the vocals. Okay. So the vocal track, let's go ahead and solo that. Alright, I'll take that easier. Yelling, angle to the sun! Alright. Solo it.
But when you've got to live, it's your anger to the sun.
This one was really kind of tough because, and I told him about it later, that it seemed like his voice was fried by the time he got a final take on this. But there are things you can do that are kind of cool. And I went ahead and added a good amount of saturation to his voice here.
To the sun.
And that's not showing up. Why isn't that showing oh, yeah, because I bypassed it. That's why. Yeah, I didn't use the Abbey Road Saturation. I actually opted for something a lot more aggressive, which is this. And it's really kind of a cool one. And this is actually pretty extreme. The setting I chose here, the overdrive, and turned up the damage control. Yeah, and actually did a little EQ on it there. But this is adding distortion. Saturation is another term for distortion, but I usually think of distortion as extreme, and saturation is like almost sort of like you're adding an undetectable amount of distortion. But I think what that does is it helps bring some presence and resonance back into the voice. Yes, it's so extreme. I can tell that it's an effect in this mix, but without it, we kind of suffer. So let's go ahead and turn it off and take a listen to that. Where is it? Here it is. Okay.
But when you've got to live, it's your anger to the sun.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's kind of like raspy, and it's lost its power. There also is room reverb going on it, as reverb called empty stage, and that kind of helps fill out the space too. You turn that off, it starts to get even weaker. So take a listen to that.
But when you've got to live, it's your anger to the sun.
Yeah, I actually kind of like his voice, but I felt to compete with everything else going on in this mix, it had to be a lot sharper, brighter, more presence, more power. So I did these things. I added this empty stage reverb, and you can kind of tell, like it sounds like a tremendous amount when you don't hear any of the other instruments.
But when you've got to live,
right? But in the mix, it's just enough that you can say, oh yeah, there is some reverb there, And then this reverb's shared elsewhere too. I've got it on the overall guitar mix, and I've got it on the drums too. And so what this is it kind of sticks everything in the same room, because they're all sharing the same reverb at different levels. And there's a way to make things kind of recede and come forward in the mix by adding more or less reverb. The tricky thing to remember also when things recede is that it's not as directional. So their sonic footprint spreads, as opposed to when they come forward in the foreground, the footprint and the place in the mix gets a lot tighter. So let's go ahead and turn everything back on the way it was. Okay, so we'll turn the screen for back on. Like I said, that's something that comes in Reason. Usually, if I've got a better vocal track, I'm going to rely on something like this. It's through Waves. I forget how much I paid for it. It wasn't a lot of money. It's probably like $30. I think Butch Vig at least consulted on this. I know he didn't build it himself, but it's supposed to mimic this particular Saturator that was used by the Beatles on Abbey Road, apparently, or at least at Abbey Road Studios. I can kind of hear it, like on some of those songs. Like if I listen to Helter Skelter, and I hear like the saturation that's on the voice in that song, this really does have that kind of effect. There was another one I got with this too called the yeah this 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 tape machine here that also adds tape saturation, but it also adds this kind of has these like wow and flutter and noise, like the kind of things that would happen to tape. Um, it's not as great as I thought it was going to be. Like I thought, oh man, this is going to be cool. You're going to be able to throw this on top of the whole mix, and you're going to have this vibe that you're mixing this whole track here onto tape. That's really not the case. It actually sounds a little more like the Kiss album, Hotter Than Hell. If you ever want to hear a really trashy recording, go listen to that one. If you turn this plug-in up on the drum kit, you're going to get that same sound like the snare drum was recorded in a urinal in Doak Campbell Stadium sound with this, as if you actually went and did that. That's an expression my friend Mike used to describe the way the drums sound on that album. No offense to Kiss, I mean they made fun of it too. I know. I think they realize it wasn't the best production. So, anyways, yeah, this is kind of a cool thing. This J37 stereo tape saturation, but it's it's a thing. And I did use a little bit of it here. I used it on the special kind of resonant, not resonant. What's the word I'm looking for? On the trebly bass track, this bass player uses a lot of effects. He uses a lot of modulation. He uses a lot of distortion and things of that nature. And I did kind of compress it a bit. Use the tape compression on that, and I thought it added something. I mean, I always kind of have to. You have to always kind of judge these things and ask: is it really better? Like you may have this thing and you think it's great and you want to put it on everything, but with all these tracks, you have to ask yourself: is it better or worse because I'm doing this to it? And the other thing is you have to constantly check yourself from lying to yourself when you're mixing, as we tend to want to believe just because we sank a lot of time into something that it's good. And that is not the case when it comes to mixing. I have many times spent 3-4 hours working on something I think is fantastic, and the next day I go to listen to it and I just realize I went down this really horrible rabbit hole, and I put way too much reverb on it, or it sounds like someone threw a towel over the top of it. It's just bad. So I guess that's something to keep in mind. What else can be said about this? You got to reference all the time when you're mixing. I know that's something you've heard a lot of, but yeah, definitely go ahead and keep Spotify up in the background or something else where you can constantly compare what you're doing to real music out there. You need to be realistic with yourself too. We're working in Propellerhead Reason. With instruments that were recorded on amps that were probably not over $1,000, and microphones like the SM57 and the 421, and we don't have a Royer 121 or $1,000 microphone. So when you're mixing, you need to be honest with yourself and say, is this ever gonna sound as good as something the Stones made, like Tattoo You? And it's like, you're never gonna get there, man. Like you really need to be realistic. You need to be honest with yourself. That being said, I think you can do a lot. Let's go ahead and stop this thing from soloing again. We'll go back over here. Here's a cool little effect. what that was. I think it's over here. Yeah, okay. So this is one of the little special effects that comes with Reason. Let's go ahead and add it. And what's happening here? Let's go ahead and you see this little knob here with the green square around it. This is automated in the recording, so that's going to slowly raise. And you can automate pretty much any control in Reason by simply right-clicking it, and you say Edit Automation, and then what it does is it creates an automation lane. Here they are. So on this one here, it's and it tells you what was automated was the volume. To edit these, you can double-click them, and you grab this little pencil tool right here to go ahead and draw these lines and move them up and down. And so I didn't even have to really manipulate the knob itself while this was playing. You can just go in there and draw the automation on it. What else? What else? What else? What else? I'm talking about Reason. So yeah, be sure when you finally have your final mix that you have plenty of headroom. It looks like this one's peaking somewhere around -2 dBs. That's cool because then that gives me an opportunity to kind of raise things in mastering. You don't want it all the way to the top where there's no more room to increase things with a maximizer. And I think for most of this I had these devices closed. But so much of Reason, like, I love this DAW so much because everything tends to work. And I've used a lot of them before this. I used GarageBand, I used Nuendo, I used Cubase. And there was always some part of the recording process or the mixing process where I really could not figure something out because I was getting like a buzz or something was crackling because the drivers were wrong or something, and it would just take me hours to figure out so much of Propellerhead Reason. And this is kind of an old version of it too. This is, I believe, 10 that I'm still using, and they're up to something like 12 or 13. I don't know. You can go check. You've got the internet. But everything works. It's just absolutely amazing. All the plugins, all the control features that I'm trying to use. Anytime I'm trying to add automation, it doesn't stifle your imagination. It's like if you imagine it, this program's here for you. It's going to do it. And usually, if I am stumped by something, like something's not going right, something sounds wrong, something sounds messed up, I would say 10 times out of 10, I am the reason it's messed. I am the reason things are going wrong. I did something wrong, and it's not the software. So maybe I am an evangelist for Propellerhead Reason. I don't think there's enough of us out there that, at least I haven't seen enough examples of people that actually put together rock bands on this. But yeah, you can. It works out pretty good. I'm not going to get into explaining the difference between gain and the levels. Okay. There is kind of a thing, and then this is where people are going to blow up the comment section, and probably including the guy who played this drum. You can see here I've actually applied a noise gate on some of this stuff. And you can adjust the range. Let's go ahead and solo one. Let's go ahead and solo the kick drum. All right. And the reason it's been solo, it has this noise gate on it, is to decrease a lot of the incidental noise coming in from the other drums. You can hear them going off. You can hear the snare and things like that. If I turn this thing off, you can probably hear it a lot better. Right? So this is one thing to kind of get used to with mixing tracks from a drum kit, like actually miking a kit versus an electric kit, or using software drums, is that they're not isolated. And so sometimes it can really add up. Like the snare comes through on a lot of these channels, and that's all very additive, and it can make your snare start to get louder and louder and louder. And in some instances, it's just too much snare because it's coming in through too many microphones. In which case, what you can do is you can apply these noise gates, and that tends to help the situation. By itself, yeah, you can kind of hear you can sort of hear the noise gate working. What do I have this one on now? Okay, I didn't have the compressor on it. Okay. I can't recall if I turned off the right button, if I turned off the compressor or the gate when I just did that. I don't know. I'll have to go back and look. You get the idea, though. What I'm trying to talk about here is this actual gate. Okay, let's stop soloing it. So yeah, my feeling with this, I mean, there's probably people out there listening to this and they're like, "Oh, this sounds like total crap, dude." Hey, I don't care. I'm gonna tell you what. I've been mixing for like 10 years. It's not my full-time job. I do this when I have a chance. I do this when I have tracks, and I've been doing it. I've been working with this program since I want to say 2018 probably. Since 2018 I've been using Propellerhead Reason. So 7 years with this, and then I started out using Nuendo way back in like 2000. So I've been doing this for a really long time, and I always take notes. I'm always learning, and I'm on that path. I am not Mutt Lang. I am not Butch Vig. I am not the most incredible producer in the world, and there's a lot of hobbyists out there that put me to shame doing this. That's fine. This is just me trying to demonstrate kind of things to look for when you're putting a mix together and you're putting these tracks together in Propellerhead Reason. And I hope it's helpful. I think I'll do another one where I can show like how fast you can go from scratch, go from zero to having a workable mix. I'm not saying having a finished mix, but you can actually rather quickly have a good working mix set up just from opening a new file. And I think I'll do that, and it might be really beneficial to see.